Hello my dear friends, you're in the military with summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in the world on the 14th of August of 2026. Today we have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first let's talk about the conflict on the territory of Ukraine, where during the previous 24 hours the Russians improved their position significantly. And first let's talk about the most important direction, about the cities of Dobropillia, Druzhkivka and so on. So first let's talk about the city of Dobropillia. As you can see, the map has been adjusted significantly, and these are the changes between the dates. So this is the end of the 13th of August of 2026, and this is already the end of the 14th of August. The Russians improved their positions almost through the entire city of Dobropillia, through its southern part, through its eastern part, and through its northern part. So let's discuss everything in details. First of all, let's talk about attacks. The Russians, since the beginning of summer of 2026, accelerate their attacks with the drones and with missiles and with bombs through the entire city of Dobropillia, especially through its western parts, because the western parts of the settlement of Dobropillia is the main and the most important citadel of the city. And during the previous days, lots of explosions were recorded right exactly through this territory, and the Russians were tasked to soften defenses of the armed forces of Ukraine. And when the Russians managed to pin down the Ukrainians and to soften defenses, they began their major offensive operation. And as a result of these attacks, according to different pro-Russian sources, the Russians improved their positions through the southern parts of the settlement of Dobropillia. The Russians, as you can see, according to these changes, took under complete control of several streets. This is the most important thing. The second thing, the Russians managed to cross the street of Zaliznichne and to take first buildings through the citadel of Dobropillia. Furthermore, the Russians managed to cut the southern part into two pieces, the most southwestern part, this industrial zone, and the citadel of Dobropillia itself. Another important thing is that the Russians crossed railways through the city of Dobropillia, at least at two places. So once again, let's take a look at this line. So these are railways of the city of Dobropillia, and as you can see, railways goes let's say like this between the eastern and the western parts of the city, and railways basically create the citadel of Dobropillia itself. And as you can see, according to these changes, the Russians crossed railways from the south and from the northeast. So these are the changes on the ground in this area. The Russians managed to take under complete control this residential area, and the Russians approached the multi-story block of the city, so the citadel itself. Furthermore, according to pro-Russian sources, the armed forces of the Russian Federation took under complete control this facility to the north of the settlement. This is a very important facility. Now the Russians have strong control over the T-0515 road that the Ukrainians used to support the contingent through the Dobropillia direction. And telling the truth and summarizing everything that we can see right now in front of our screens, we can say that most likely the Russians would try to do everything possible with the purpose to establish complete control over the city of Dobropillia before parliament elections on the territory of Russia begin. They are starting during fall, during this September of 2026, though the Russians have around a month to finish the battle for the city. But according to these changes, we can say that most likely within the next months the Russians probably will will not be able to establish complete control over the Dobropillia agglomeration, but at least the Russians would be able to make the main job of this battle. So we will see the same situation as we used to see during the siege of Konstantinovka, when the Russians announced control over the settlement, but in the reality the Russians controlled up to only 80% of the settlement when they announced complete control over the city, and still the Ukrainians had possibilities to send sabotage and reconnaissance groups, and only probably 2 or 3 weeks after the Russians finished the battle for the city. So most likely we'll see the same situation before the Russian parliament elections. The Russians will try to take under complete control up to 80% of the city. They will announce complete control and they will finish the battle probably 2 weeks after. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Druzhkivka direction, or let's talk about the Dobropillia-Druzhkivka arc. So the Dobropillia-Druzhkivka arc is the territory between the cities of Dobropillia along T05-14 road and the city of Druzhkivka itself. So we are talking about this territory. And since the beginning of August of 2026, the Russians have improved their position significantly. So, and these are the changes on the ground between the dates. So, for example, this is the situation by the end of the 9th of August of 2026. The Russians, since the beginning of August of 2026, took under complete control at least 3 villages, the village of Krasny Kut, Toretsk, and Tarskoye. And then the Russians continue advancing further. And let's take a look at the map. And these are the changes between 9th of August and the 14th of August of 2026. So as you can see, these are not just something like additional developments, additional progress on the ground. This looks like a bridge, local bridge of the front line between cities of Dobropillia and Druzhkivka, and the Russians continue advancing. Furthermore, today the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that as a result of clashes, the village of Novomykolaivka was captured by Russians, and these are the changes on the ground in this area between the dates. Yesterday, reports about Russian control over the settlement of Nikolaevka were published by different neutral mappers. Today, this information was confirmed by the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation. Furthermore, according to these changes, we see that the Russians approached the settlements of Rubizhne and Zolotoy Kolodец from the southwest, which means that in coming days the battle for this territory begins as well. The Russians will try to take under complete control the Dobropillia-Druzhkivka arc just with one simple purpose: to outflank the settlement of Druzhkivka from behind, to outflank the city of Kramatorsk from behind, and to attack the Ukrainians from behind. If the Russians are able to take under complete control these territories, this is going to be basically the beginning of the end of the Sloviansk-Druzhkivka battle, because from these positions the Ukrainians won't have much chances to support their contingent and to save their positions through the Sloviansk-Druzhkivka agglomeration. And the Russians, it seems, are tasked to do this as soon as possible and as fast as possible. Now let's move further. As for the city of Druzhkivka itself, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians continued bombing the most southern parts of the settlement using drones and aviation. Lots of videos were published how Russians were bombing the city of Druzhkivka with bombs, trying to soften defenses of the armored forces of Ukraine to ruins. But as you can see, no changes on the line between Druzhkivka and Konstantinovka were recorded. When talking about the Sloviansk-Kramatorsk, we have lots of very important updates. During the previous 24 hours, lots of videos were published where we can see the damage or destruction of bridges through the Sloviansk-Kramatorsk agglomeration. In this video, we can see the consequences of attack. The Russians attacked the bridge with a bomb, but it seems that the Russians missed. Most likely, the next bomb will hit the target. As a result of attack, the bridge was badly damaged in the area of the settlement of Yasnogorovka, which is a part of the Kramatorsk agglomeration. When talking about the city of Sloviansk, here we have the same situation. Lots of videos were published where we can see bridges destroyed over the river of Kazyonny Torets, and furthermore we have bridges that were destroyed and damaged. So as you can see, the Sloviansk-Druzhkivka agglomeration is split in 2 pieces along the river that goes right in the middle of this area. In the central, we're talking about the river of Kazyonny Torets, and now the Russians, as you can see, are tasked to destroy the bridges that connect the western and the eastern parts of the agglomeration. This will allow the Russians to accelerate their offensive from the east and the western direction, because the Ukrainians would have huge problems with logistics. Now let's move further and let's talk about the northern flank of the Sloviansk-Druzhkivka agglomeration. We haven't received almost anything since the beginning of this year about this direction, not about since the beginning of this summer. The latest report we received was the report when the Russians, more precisely the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, reported that just 149 buildings left before the end of the battle for Liman. This report was made almost almost 2 or 3 months ago, and since that moment we haven't received anything. So, and of course, based on this situation, we can make a conclusion that something is wrong through this territory, and we expected that in coming days or hours the Ukrainians would announce a report about, let's say, the Ukrainian counteroffensive operation that allowed the Ukrainians to stabilize the situation or to recapture lost territories. But today is already a Friday, or the Friday of the 14th of August of 2026, and we haven't received anything from the Ukrainian side as well. And this evening, pro-Russian sources published a very interesting video. We have added this video to the map, but we haven't adjusted anything based on this video because we have some doubts. Today, pro-Russian sources published this video, a very important video, and according to the author of this video, we can see 2 Russian soldiers that were moving through the settlement of Oskil, at least through its southeastern parts. So as of now, and from this angle and from this zoom, of course, we can't confirm whether these soldiers are Russian soldiers or these Ukrainian soldiers. Very difficult to say. The only thing we have is a video published, the video that was published by a very reliable pro-Russian source, and he claims that these are Russian soldiers. So there are 2 episodes. As you can see, during the first episode we can see 2 Russian soldiers. During the second episode we can see just a Russian soldier, and these 2 episodes took place through these territories. So here, so of course, based on this video, if we had 100% proofs that these are Russian soldiers, of course, then based on this video we would adjust the map like this. We would color all these territories under complete Russian control. As of now, we will just keep this information in our minds, searching for and seeking for additional clarifications and additional proofs. But once again, if this information is correct, then this is already the end, basically the end of the battle for the Borova pocket, because if this is the configuration of the front line, the Russians control the main logistics and supply lines, and basically the contingent of the armored forces of Ukraine, who is currently located through the Borova pocket, was caught by the Russians in Cauldron without any chances for evacuation, at least with vehicles. So once again, this information was published by pro-Russian sources. Maybe this is something like a preparation before the big announcement, before the big news. Maybe they will publish this report tomorrow. Who knows? Everything is possible, because the situation with the river of Oskil and the settlement is not the only situation like this that was published during the previous 24 hours. For example, this evening, pro-Russian sources also published a video from the Kazachia Lopen direction. We haven't added this video to the map because it was this report was published just a few minutes ago before I start making the video. But pro-Russian sources of the Group of Forces North published the video with the Russian flags through the settlements of Kudiivka and Hoptivka. So most likely tomorrow, the Group of Forces North and the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation would confirm this information, and then we will adjust the map. But as of now, we keep the map as is. So as you can see, the Russians began publishing updates from different front lines, using different sources, pro-Russian sources, about the situation on the ground, and we see that the Russians continue advancing along the entire line of combat contact, and it seems that in coming days we might receive lots of changes on the ground, especially through the Borova direction and probably through the Kupiansk, through the city of Kupiansk as well, and of course through the city of Dobropillia, because despite the fact that we have dozens of reports made by different reliable sources that the Russians are improving their positions, we see that there is a very big gap between positions along the line of combat contact, between geolocated positions and the current and the city itself. And according to different sources, all these territories are already under Russian control, but we don't have proofs. But most likely we'll see the proofs very, very soon, because the parliament elections in Russia starts very, very soon as well. Now let's discuss additional updates that took place during the previous 24 hours, and probably the most important is that the Russians during the previous 24 hours attacked the territory of Ukraine using probably dozens of drones, and the Russians actually intensified the use of the Banderol missiles. The Russians during the previous 24 hours using Banderol missiles were attacking the city of Zhytomyr, and as a result of attack, some facility was wiped out, and this video was published by local locals. Here we have black smoke over the city of Zhytomyr. Probably a fuel depot or a gas station was destroyed by Russians, and the most important thing is that this attack took place not through the eastern parts, not somewhere in the Chernigov region or not somewhere in the Sumy or Kharkiv regions. This attack took place basically through the western parts of Ukraine. Obviously, this is something like a test attack, something like drills with the real weapons from the Russian side, because now the Russians are testing their technologies, are testing their effectiveness of their attack through the western parts of Ukraine, because since the beginning of this year, probably thousands of objects through the eastern part of Ukraine were destroyed, and obviously the Russians are about probably to finish destruction of big objects that Ukrainians could use for military purposes. And of course, sooner or later, the Russians would be forced to move there, to shift their focus further in the central part of Ukraine and in the western part. So that is why the Russians began preparation and began testing of their equipment and their capabilities in advance, trying to understand what do they need to improve if they want to attack the western parts of Ukraine, and if they want to attack the western parts of Ukraine at the same level as they attack the eastern and the southeastern parts of Ukraine these days. Now let's move further. The city of Odesa and the Odesa region was also under attack from the Russian side. The Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation published additional reports about strikes that were carried out during the previous 24 hours, and we have lots of very important videos. As for the Zaporozhye, as for the Odesa direction, the Russians were using jet-powered drones of the fourth generation, and in this video we can see the Russian GERAN 4 drone that was moving towards a target on the territory of the Odesa region, and we can see how the Ukraine's MiG-29s was following the drone, trying to intercept it. And in this video we can see this clearly. And here we have probably the same pair, but from another angle. Here we have the Russian powered jet drone, and as you can see, this powered jet drone is maneuvering, trying to outsmart the pilot of MiG-29s who was trying to intercept the drone. As you can see, the flights are taking place on a very low latitude, which means that obviously we can see the work of professionals both from the Russian and from the Ukrainian side. The MiG-29s was maneuvering, trying to hit the drone, but it seems that he haven't managed to do this, because we have this video where we can see an explosion that took place somewhere in the Odesa region. Probably we can see these MiG-29s. As you can see, MiG-29s is a very important vehicle and aircraft for the armed forces of Ukraine. Probably this is the reason why the Ukrainians are trying to accelerate the deal between Poland and Ukraine on this matter. But I would like to remind you that Poland has prepared a batch of MiG-29s for Ukraine, and Ukrainians are going to use them as air defense forces, but Poland requires or demands in exchange to receive drone technologies and lots of drones as well. And this is exactly what the president of Ukraine doesn't want to give to the Polish side, because Zelensky wants to be a monopolist on drones through the entire Europe, when talking about experience, when talking about production, and of course he understands that this is the future drones and so on, and he doesn't want to sell this technology to Poland, but Poland will not provide Ukrainians MiG-29s without these technologies. So a very interesting situation, political. We'll see how the things are going to develop. Let's continue with the Odesa region. Another important thing, if you remember, during the July and August of 2026, the Russians were attacking the city of Mayaki and the river of Dniester, and today we received first satellite pictures where we can see that the bridge in the area of Mayaki was destroyed, and this happened on the 6th of August of 2026, between 6th and 14th of August. But despite the fact that the Russians destroyed the bridge or damaged badly, we see that the Ukrainians managed to build the pontoon bridge very fast. So they managed to build this pontoon bridge very fast, and probably to stabilize the logistics, and which means that the Russians would attack these pontoon bridges or this pontoon bridge very, very soon as well. And I would like to remind you once again that in coming days or even hours, the Russians most likely would carry out another massive attack through the entire territory of Ukraine. And that's it for today. The Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes to my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye-bye.